Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Williamson County Sports Connection. I'm Jack Daniels, your host, and with me for today's show is the head wrestling coach at Page High School / co-athletic director, assistant wrestling coach at Woodland Middle School, Coach Benji Gray. Welcome, Coach.
Thank you for having me.
Well, I know this time of the year, we're just getting back from the holidays and all that good stuff, but your wrestling team has been going now for a couple of months.
Absolutely. Started in November, about to wrap up, got a month left in season.
Right. Well, let's talk a little bit about you. I think I may have had you on the show last year sometime, but let's go back to where you grew up and where you went to school and, kind of what got you into coaching.
Well, I went to high school at Halls High School in Knoxville, which I think you have been involved with in the
That's
past.
where I started.
So, legendary coach Chris Vandergriff was my wrestling coach, and so I went to college at UT, and he invited me to come back and coach with him. So I coached with him from 2004 until he retired. And then I helped coach with a former teammate of mine, Shannon Sane, who's still the head coach there and was a two-time state champion. So we qualified for the region and the state duels there before I left. I had 2 state champions, several individual qualifiers. And then my wife drugged me to Nashville.
Okay.
So,
like a lot of wives do sometimes.
Like a lot of wives do.
Yeah.
She had a job here, so I picked up and moved here. No teaching positions open, so I was very fortunate enough. You were the AD at Page High School at the time, and you invited me to come over and look at their program, which was struggling, and took on that program and have been blessed ever since.
Well, great. Now, I know you've got a side job that you're involved in. I want to talk just a little bit about that because going through the University of Tennessee, you are very, very involved in their athletic programs. And would you please tell the viewers in what way?
Well, I was probably the most famous unknown person on UT's campus.
Mm-hmm.
I was the mascot Smokey from 2000 to 2005. So I was at every men's event, football, men's basketball, baseball, along with other things such as tennis, track and field. I was on full athletic scholarship, which most people don't realize.
Great.
Absolutely, it was great.
Yeah.
Point I met my wife. She was a cheerleader there. It's a classic Lifetime movie, dog cheerleader. So, and I actually wrestled for UT's club team while I was there too. We went all the way to nationals there, and so it was a fun opportunity. But along with that, I worked for a company called UCH, Universal Cheerleading Association. They're the largest cheer, dance, and mascot company in the country, and I am their national mascot director. So we have a college mascot national championship and cheer championship along with dance, just like football and basketball have their national championships.
Okay.
We have one as well. So it's actually coming up in 2 weeks. It's in Orlando. So won nationals twice. So I'm a 2-time mascot national champion. So I have a big fat ring and everything. So,
oh man, what our viewers didn't know, I'm telling you. Well, that's great, Coach. That's great. Let's talk. I want to talk about this year's team, but can you kind of tell us how we ended up last year at Page? Because you guys didn't you make the state in the duels?
We had didn't have a full roster, so we had a lot of holes we had to fill, and the guys really stepped up when they had to. We qualified for the state duels first time in 14 years. Page had done that in the AAA, the small school duels.
Right.
And the duels were separated: small school, large school, and then Division II. So we had to wrestle very tough region duels against Harpeth and Eagleville. So hopefully we're going to repeat this year. So it's going to be real tough, but we have more guys on the team. We have a veteran squad. Only have 3 seniors, so they're young, but they know what it takes to get there.
Okay, so tell us where you're at right now as far as record-wise, and as far as you said you had 3 spots open on your team. What weight classes are we dealing with?
Well, luckily this year we have a much larger roster. We are 10-7 overall, and that's with every dual meet. That's large schools and small schools.
All right.
The only small school that we've lost to is Forest, and so we're actually wrestling them again next week. So with a new lineup and with the additional 2 pounds after Christmas and the weight allowance, we'll see how our lineup stacks up. We're missing a 220 and a 195. Now I've got room to bump guys up to those weights, but it's just a part of strategy on who I want where.
Okay. Well, what would you say this year's team strengths lie then?
I think we had a young team last year, only had 1 senior last year. This year only have 3. So a lot of the young guys are back, so they know what it's like to be in a pressure situation. They know what it takes to step up to qualify for those duels. they've been a big influence on the young guys. Now, I'm very fortunate that a lot of my freshmen are former wrestlers from Page Middle School. And Coach Pelkey does a great job with the Page Middle School program. He's growing numbers. With Page High, though, some of those kids are zoned for Centennial High School.
Right.
So I'm not always getting all those guys. But the ones that have come over have been very successful this year.
So as far as the 3 seniors that you have, can you kind of mention some names and maybe what weight classes those guys are in?
I have Theo Griffin. He's 145. He is a third-year wrestler. Harper Greiner is my starting 182, very strong. He actually attended the J.D. Robinson camp in Minnesota this past summer.
Okay.
It's a full-month training program, did real well. And then my other senior is Nathan Sizemore at 126. He's been with me all 4 years. So he is actually my 4-year guy that was there when I started, and he's going out with me.
Well, I know in the duels you're going against AAA, but in the individual, they throw everybody in together. Now, they take the top 4 in the region that move on to the state tournament?
Right. This region, in my opinion, is probably one of the toughest regions in the state, definitely top 3. The only toughers would be the Chattanooga region with Saudi Daisy, Cleveland, Bradley County. But this region has shown the past couple of years after they moved the state to the Ag Center, we've got a great wrestling following. We have several guys that have won the state championships from this region and went on to wrestle at college programs. So, yeah, currently this year is the last year they're going to be grouping everybody in the same region. I believe TSSAA just made a decision. AAA, small schools, will have their own individual next year. Large school will have their own individual next year, and then Division II will continue to have their own individual state championship.
Well, districts, or is it districts or regions in wrestling?
Well, for the large school, there's districts.
Okay.
So you have to, top 2 from each district go to the region duels. In the small schools, we don't have enough to have districts, so we just automatically qualify for the region duels, and then the top school out of those small school region duels qualifies for the state. The top 2 from the large schools qualify for the region duels or the state duels.
Okay. So the region that you're in AAA, how many schools are in that region? Basically,
there are basically 10 schools. Some of them are all the way out in Memphis.
Okay.
Now, not all schools compete. It's open. They can choose not to compete in the region duels if they don't want to. This year, Summit is hosting them, so it's a lot closer for us. Last year, Harpeth hosted them, did a great job. So we'll see.
So when the schools come in for the region duels, the top 2 teams advance?
For the AAA and the large schools, yes. For the small schools, only the top team advances.
Okay. And the state dual championship, where's that going to be held at?
That'll be held at the Williamson County Ag Center, and it's the first weekend in February.
Has that always been there?
No, it used to be in Chattanooga on UTC's campus. And you could see in the past when it was down there, there were a lot of Chattanooga followings there. It was very filled. Now, being here at the Ag Center, I think it's a great venue. 1, it's closer to home. I got to love that. But 2, you have a multitude of matches. You have a great following within the Nashville area, and it's a central location in the state. I mean, people from Memphis are coming centrally located, Chattanooga, Knoxville. It just makes more sense.
So out of the teams, the 10 teams in the region, besides Page, who is that top team you got to beat?
There are a couple. I would definitely say Forest, Eagleville, and Harpeth are the top teams that we'll be competing with. Like I said, we'll see what Forest is like in a couple weeks. We won't see Eagleville or Harpeth until then. So hopefully we'll get a good draw in the bracket, help us out a little bit.
Now, who won the state duels in the AAA last year?
I believe it's Chattanooga Central.
Okay.
And we actually caught them first round and just took a beating. So I think getting to state duels is an experience, though. It makes your guys want to go back. It shows them what it takes to be better. Pigeon Forge from East Tennessee has been a runner-up for the past 2 years. I'm looking for them to be strong again this year and compete, possibly even win it.
Well, what is it about Chattanooga that they dominate, not only in the AAA, but the AAA and the individual year in, year out as far as the team scores goes?
I think it's all about feeder programs. I think they have great feeder programs that feed directly into their elementary and their middle schools, which then again go straight into their high schools. I think they're very competitive with one another. But I think it also had to do with the state championships being there. I think now that they've moved to Nashville, you don't see as many Chattanooga fans follow them up here. You see a greater support from the Nashville area. And that's why I think a lot of the Nashville teams get more support. I think that's why you're seeing more Nashville teams be successful.
I know we had a lot of individual state champions last year, specifically. I think maybe 5 in our county. And I don't know how many outside Williamson County. And there's how many divisions? I mean, how many weight classes?
There's 14 weight classes.
Okay.
Ranging, from 106 all the way up to heavyweight, which is 285.
Okay. Well, am I right or wrong on 5 or what was it, 3 or 4 individual state champs from Williamson County?
That's about right.
Okay, because Independence maybe had a couple.
Independence had one. Centennial had one.
Franklin have 2.
Franklin. Ravenwood always has. Ravenwood's looking real strong again, too. I mean, they're looking to compete for a team state championship this year.
Well, I know there's some big tournaments that happen every year in our community. I know the Brentwood tournament that they have, maybe here in another week or so. They have teams from all over the state come in, sometimes teams from out of state. Do you participate in any of those type tournaments?
Yeah, we're planning on going to the GP West tournament that's at Brentwood coming up. Joe Blair has a great program, historic program over at Brentwood. They always run a great tournament. Brings in some tough teams from Kentucky. So going into this part of the season, if your kids do well at that tournament, you have a good idea of where they're going to go into postseason.
Okay. Now, does Page High School, did you guys host a tournament?
We hosted a middle school tournament this year.
Okay.
Running a tournament's kind of a difficult job. I mean, if you've got to have enough people to volunteer to help you. I like running tournaments. I think it's fun. That's something I want to do once our team gets bigger. Once we have more participation, that's something I look forward to.
So what type of funding do you have at the high school level for your wrestling program? Do you have to do fundraisers, Coach? Yeah,
we do our own fundraisers. We have, our 2 accounts. We have our fundraising account through the school, and then we have a Booster Club account. The Booster Club is also very supportive of us along with the school. Booster Club just bought us 2 new scoreboards, which I asked for. Very grateful for that. So we do all our fundraising, and then wrestling's, in my opinion, for us is a kind of a low costly sport. We don't use a lot of funds. Mostly our tournament fees and our officials' fees are our biggest expenses.
Unless you have to replace a mat or buy a mat now, because that you can't tell me that's a low cost now.
No, and we
what's
need
a mat cost now anyway?
Well, we need a new mat. They're roughly around $8,500, $10,000, and so once you get a mat, you're going to keep one for a long time.
Right.
And you can get them reconditioned for less. But still, you're looking at $4,000 to get reconditioned.
So give me an example of a fundraiser that your kids do every year kind of to help raise money for your program.
Our biggest fundraiser, and it's all thanks to Jerome Bannister and the Booster Club at Page, through a raffle we do at Page.
Oh, yeah.
That's our biggest fundraiser. They worked tirelessly to get it approved through the state of Tennessee.
So they did.
Excuse me. And so we sell raffle tickets each fall. And they draw them at the winners out, the last home football game, and it's for cash prizes. So if anybody wants to buy tickets next fall, Page Wrestling.
And the kids get to go out, and you get to keep a certain dollar amount from the tickets and that kind of stuff.
The tickets are $20. 8 of it goes back to the fund, the Pacific Fund, the 4 to the Booster Club, and then 4 towards the prize money.
Okay.
So we get a percentage of that, which is a great fundraiser for us.
Sure, that is. Well, Coach, do you consider yourself a defense coach or an offensive type coach when it comes to wrestling? Because I know there's 2 different styles now.
When I started wrestling, I was much more of an offensive coach. That was the way one of my coaches was, and so I took a lot of notes from him. But I used to watch the Baylor coaches, Jim Morgan and them, sit in their corner when I would wrestle, and they were always quiet and they were always taking notes. Never saw them yell much. So I've kind of transitioned into a more defensive coach. Like my philosophy is, it's hard for the guys to hear you when they're on the mat. They have their headgears on, they're concentrating. So I tell my guys I do all my coaching in the practice room. Very rarely are you going to hear me yell from the corner.
Sure.
So the only thing I really yell is when I see things open up or what position to choose in between periods. That's the most they're ever going to hear from me.
So I guess I probably didn't phrase my question right, because I'm thinking aggressive type kids. Am I teaching my kid to be an aggressive type wrestler or a defensive type wrestler, where all I'm doing is popping him in the forehead, aggravating him, trying to get him to shoot on me so I can catch him as he's shooting? I mean, are you kind of talk about that a little bit, Benji?
I think you have to know your guys.
Okay.
And you kind of coach them to whatever their strengths are. Like, I know which ones of my guys are stronger on their feet, so I'm going to make them be more aggressive on their feet.
Okay.
I know which ones of my guys are not very good on the mat, so they're not going to be very offensive on the mat. I want to be defensive, back on their feet as quickly as they can. So I think you have to be the type of coach that realizes the strengths and weaknesses of your team, and then you kind of coach to their successes.
Well, here's a guy, never wrestled before in his life. He comes out. What would be the very first thing as his head coach that you're going to teach him?
I have plenty of those guys, by the way. Fundamentals, good stance, and defense.
Okay, so a defensive stance is number one. Because being an old football coach now, we talk about fundamentals all the time, so I'm kind of interested in the fundamentals of wrestling. Okay.
I preach fundamentals. Even if my guys on the first week, if they've wrestled all their life or they're brand new, we go to the fundamentals. I want to make sure they're in a good stance.
Which is what?
Well, it's according, you can have a lead foot stance, square, but I want your hands out in front of you.
Okay.
So if a guy shoots, I can defend. I want my elbows back at home. I don't want to be reaching. I try to teach them movement, move in a circle. You back up, you're going to get hit for stalling. So I think it's funny, there are a lot of fans out there, or parents, who sometimes see matches or see what coaches do, and they don't understand that the coaches might have strategy for it, or they might be moving guys around or bumping weight classes for a strategy. Wrestling has a lot of rules that I think a lot of people don't know about.
Oh, I'm sure, and I know a little bit about it, but there's a lot of rules I don't know about. Well, let's get into takedowns. Here's a new kid, so what's the first takedowns that we're going to teach her? How many takedowns are we going to teach this kid? And because there's a bunch of them, I know, but what are you going to start with?
I always start with the most simple. My coach taught me, it's, single leg.
Okay.
Take a shot, one leg comes up, and a good finish. There are multiple techniques for taking a kid down and multiple finishes for each. The way we do is we go through and teach a move, and then we review that move all year long. So even if I have a kid who may start in January, he's going to play a little catch-up, but he's still going to learn what we've learned all year long. So.
Okay. So let's kind of talk about point system too. So you taught me a single leg, I do a single leg, and I get the kid down. How many points do I get?
That's 2 points.
All right, I'm getting 2 points, and I'm behind the kid. Mm-hmm. I'm on his back hip area. He's down on the mat. Now, as far as escapes or reversals, kind of talk about what is a kid down on the ground? What's his basic or fundamentals he's got to do?
Well, I know a lot of people realize that a takedown is control. Just because you take a guy down doesn't mean you're automatically going to get those 2 points.
Sure,
You've got to have that control. And a lot of people sometimes don't realize that from the stands. Once you do have the control from the down position, that bottom and defensive wrestler may get either 1 point for escape, which means he gets clear of the offensive wrestler, or reversal is 2 points, at which point he gets around behind the offensive wrestler at that time.
Is an escape when he gets totally clear of the other kid? I mean, if my hand's still on you, have I got away from you?
If I'm the down man and I turn and face, let's say I'm still tied up with you, if that other man loses control, then I can get the 1. I don't have to totally clear away.
Okay. Mm-hmm. And so a reversal then would be, I didn't escape, but explain what a reversal is then.
A reversal is if the bottom guy somehow reverses around the offensive man or the top man to get control. That could be through such moves as Petersons, sit-outs, Granbys, arm rolls. Anywhere where the offensive wrestler or the defensive wrestler now becomes the offensive wrestler, that's a reversal for 2.
Mm-hmm. Now, people who are not in the sport of wrestling, you just went to a foreign language.
Oh, absolutely.
With the Granbys and the sit-outs and all that kind of terminology that you're using. But with wrestling family, they kind of know or understand those type of terms. And so fundamentally speaking, what would be the first reversal form or move that you would teach a kid?
From bottom, I always go with a stand-up.
Okay.
I always think that if a kid has, 5 seconds and you're down by 1 point and you're down, you should be able to stand up. I mean, all you have to do is stand up.
Mm-hmm.
It is a lot harder than it looks, but a stand-up should be able to be done in a short amount of time. That's the first one. If I had to go with reversal, there are several. It just depends on how quick my kid is.
Mm-hmm.
So before I would teach them certain moves, and there's certain moves that my kids come in the room saying they want to do, and I hope I never see them do those moves.
So a kid who weighs 103 pounds, is that the lowest weight class?
It's 106 now.
106 versus somebody's 275.
Mm-hmm.
They ain't gonna use the same move. Probably.
Absolutely not. No.
That's why they have a whole different variety of different moves in which you could use throughout the course of a match. I know, but if a kid is down, he's on the mat. He's got the guy, I guess, has broke him down. In other words, he's down. I've heard this saying, wrist control. Mm-hmm. Does that apply to the top guy or the bottom guy?
That applies to the top guy.
Okay.
If the top guy has wrist control, that means he has tied up the defensive man's wrist to where he can't use it. Once you tie up that bottom man's wrist, usually by a 2-on-1, which means 2 hands on one wrist, you have a lot of control. There are a lot of things you can do from there, such as tilt your opponent for near fall points or back points. That is offensive points that you get from top. If you break a 90-degree angle with your opponent and the ref starts to count, and it's not like entertainment wrestling to where,
3 counts,
you're out.
You're out.
That's not it. The ref will count up to 5 seconds. 2 counts will get you 2 back points. 5 counts will get you 3 back points or near fall points.
So if he's there for 30 seconds, it doesn't make any difference. You just still got 3 points.
Right, exactly.
What if they turn them over and then right back again?
It's according if you break the initial move. If they turn them back over and let's say they let go of the wrist and they show the ref they're trying something else, then at that point you can go back over and get more near fall points.
Oh, okay.
Now the most you can outscore opponent is 15 points. If you beat an opponent by 15 or more points, the match is stopped. It's called a tech fall. Match over.
Okay. So as far as points for say I beat a guy 3-2. Mm-hmm. How many points do I win for my team?
Now, it gets kind of confusing for people that don't understand because wrestling, you're wrestling as an individual and you're wrestling as a team.
Right.
So if you beat your opponent by 7 or less points, it's called a minor decision.
Okay.
You get your team 3 points. If you beat him 8 to 14 points, it's a major decision, and you get your team 4 points. If you tech fall your opponent, which means you beat them by 15. That's 5 team points. And then if you pin your opponent, that's 6 team points.
Well, as a coach then, you're always wanting those pins in. So
Absolutely.
You get the most points. What if a kid actually does something he shouldn't do and he gets disqualified?
That's 6 points to the other team.
It's 6 points to the other team?
Just like if you don't have anybody to fill that weight class and you have to forfeit that weight class, it's automatic 6 points to the other team. So a lot of times, like last year when we were in the region duels, we were giving up 3 weight classes. That's automatically 18 points to the other team.
Exactly.
So you've kind of got to figure out where's the best place to bump your guys around to make sure that you can win, that you can make up for those 18. And you can only bump a kid up 1 weight class. So your options aren't a lot.
Well, another call that you hear quite frequently at these matches will be officials say red stalling. What does that mean?
It's according to which ref you have. Some call it more frequently than others. Basically, both wrestlers have to be on the offensive. You can't back up. You have to constantly be circling or offensively into your opponent. So I've seen referees hit kids with stalling off the initial whistle if they backed up immediately. So it's according, but you have to be offensive.
So if we're down on the mat, the guy's on top and I'm on the bottom guy can get called for stalling?
He can. If he doesn't try to escape, if he just lays there tightened up, he can get hit for stalling. As well as the top man. If the top man's just laying on top of the bottom man, not trying anything offensive, he can be hit for stalling.
Do they get a warning?
They do get warnings. They get one stalling warning per individual wrestler, and then after that, it's points.
Okay. So can you disqualify yourself for stalling?
Absolutely.
So what does that come? I mean, what happens on that? Is it like after the third point?
After the initial warning, you get 1 stalling, then another point for the second stalling, and then 2 points for the third stalling, and then on that last one, you're out. So now there are cases, though, where stalling becomes an offensive tool. You know, if you're up by 1 point with, 10 seconds left or 15 seconds left, is it smart to have your guy go in there and try something last second? Probably not. So you want him maybe to stall out that last 10 seconds.
Well, Coach, how many kids do you feel good about that may have that opportunity to make it to the state this year? You don't have to name names. Just give me a number.
Currently, I feel like I've got three guys that could qualify for the individual states. This is a very tough region, like I said.
Did you have any qualifiers last year?
Had qualifiers. Like my senior qualified last year. Had the second kid he had to wrestle was number 1 seed. And then he was 1 match away from placing. A kid that put him out was last year's defending state champion.
Okay.
So.
Did they get pulled back in the tournament at the state now?
Now, used to, the only way you got pulled back in is the guy that beat you made it to the semifinals.
Right.
Now it's a double elimination tournament. So it's fair in the fact that if you do get a bad draw and you lose,
you still got a shot.
You still got a shot to come back.
Okay.
And those matches are really some of the best to watch because those kids really want it. Who's going to come back to place? And they place through top 6. So who wants to medal in the state tournament?
Did that add more matches to the tournament bracket then?
I think it added 1 more round, because they just drop it down. So it's a 3-day event, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday, 3rd weekend in February.
Now, I know a lot of our kids help participate, not on the mats, but also in the tournament itself by being the guys with the towels that hit them and all that. Do you have kids at your school that help?
I have a couple of guys that volunteer as table workers, and a lot of the schools around here do a great job of supplying table workers and parents and extra wrestlers that do that, along with supplying the mats. Several schools take our mats over. Ag Center is very accessible to get those into. It's a great facility.
Right.
So it runs very, very well.
Well, I know Mark Reeves does a great job with TWSAA, and he's always very, very appreciative of Williamson County and Williamson County schools for their help, to get this event going over at the Ag Building, and we're excited about that coming up here in a few more weeks. Blink our eye and it'll be here.
Absolutely.
It'll be here. Well, Coach, thank you for being with us today. And
thank you.
Best of luck the rest of the season, especially in that single A, double A duels, man. Hope you get there again.
Well, we hope so. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us for the Williamson County Sports Connection. I'm Jack Daniels, your host.
Hi, my name is Tanir. I chose this book because the pictures are really good. This is one of my favorite pictures, and you can learn some facts about them too. This is one of my favorite facts. It tells a lot about history, and it tells you different types of countries and cities. And German's friend, he really likes the sport, and he wanted German Stelson to come with him and do the race across America with him. And German Stelson wins the race.
Good play, Red.